Center of the board?
That's what the rub sits.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit on the side.
Yeah, that's a nice way. That works.
Okay, so let's say good morning again, or guys at work.
Yeah.
Okay. Amar of Nachman Bar Yitzchak, right? So Nachman Bar Yitzchak, he said, Nahug Alma Kahanit Tlatzabi. The world is noeg, meaning they're accustomed to doing like these three elders, right? What are these three elders? What do they say? Rabbi Berachot Hagez. They hold like Rabbi when it comes to Berachot Hagez. Berachot Hagez is once a year, meaning whenever they would share the sheep or their animals, they would share it off from the wool, and once a year they would have to give. Like a truma type of an idea, be like about 1/60th, whatever it is. Midrabanan, really, there's no share, you can give whatever you want. But the Chachamim came along and said, give at least 1/60th of it. So when you share off your animal, so you have to give amount to the coin. So there's a specific halacha that the Gemara is going to say in a second that we hold like everybody would be noheg. They would do like Rabbi, and they held like Raboshia when it came to kalayim. Kalayim is forbidden mixtures when it comes to different types of forbidden mixtures. When it comes to planting, there was a certain case of when it came to planting, they would hold like Bebaishia, which the Gemara also is going to say in a minute. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, if you're wondering why we brought this member, why did we bring this Gemara over here, is because of this last point, because the people were noheg to be makel, to be lenient like Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, bedivrei Torah. So now, what are these cases? So the Gemara says like this: Kribalai Berachot Hagez Titania. We learned in a Braita like this. Berachot Hagez Einoig Elabaaretz. Berachot Hagez, this taking off a certain amount to give to the Kohen was only noheg. They only did it in Eretz Yisrael. That means if you live here in America and you have a sheep in your backyard, why you would have one, I don't know. But let's say you have a sheep, right? You're fattening up because you want to shecht it, whatever it is. And now you go and you shave off the sheep and you get the wool. So outside over here, you don't have to give it to the Kohen, right? There's no obligation to even separate anything for the Kohen. This is only in Eretz Yisrael. That's what he held, and everybody held like that. The world was used to hold like that, which they got off easily, right? They outside of Eretz Yisrael, they didn't have to give it. Now we said with Kirabaishia when it comes to Kalayim, the forbidden mixtures. The pasuk says, "Lord Tizra Kamecha Kalayim," that you can't plant Kalayim in your vineyard, right? Rabbi says, "L'olam ein chayev ad sheyizra chita v'seora v'chartan v'mepelad yad." You're only going to be chayev when it comes to Kalayim, when it comes to this forbidden mixture, if you take wheat seeds, barley seeds, and grape seeds, the grape pits, and you have it all in a handful, and then you go and you plant them all together. But if, let's say you would first put the wheat in, then you would put the barley in, then you would put the grape in, then a person would not be chayav for kalayim. Or even if it would grow together somehow, you would put it in afterwards, the person wouldn't be chayav. So this is a big leniency that he holds of, which the world at the time, obviously this is not the main topic of our thing. So like, don't go home and start putting things in the ground yet. But the Gemara says that the world was lenient, like this opinion that anything other than putting it all together in one hand, all three have to be together in your hand when you put it into the ground, because it has to be mixed together as seeds and mixed together in the ground. And the last thing was Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera b'divrei Torah, that we hold the world was makel like Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera when it came to the words of Torah, the Tanya. We learned in the Braita Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera Omer and divrei Torah mikabim tumah. That we said on Friday as well. The Gemara brings a pasuk for that hello devari keish numa Hashem, that my words are like fire, and just like fire cannot become tameh, so too the words of Torah cannot become tameh. So therefore, even if, let's say, you had somebody who was a bal kari who saw some emission come out and he's impure, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, that person will be allowed to learn Torah. So Ki ata Zeiri, when Zeiri came from Eretz Yisrael back to Babel, Amar Balul Tefilata, they annulled, they were mevatel this whole din of mikvah for a balkari, right? Seemingly for a balkari. No, but what they did was they weren't mevatel, they didn't disregard the halachot of going to the mikveh for a Baal Keri. It means that they were mevatel, they disregarded the laws of washing your hands. So the Gemara explains, the one that says that they annulled it, they got rid of this whole tevila, the going to the mikveh for Baal Keri, is Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. They hold like Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera that says that the words of Torah are not mikabel tuma, that words of Torah cannot become impure. So therefore, there was no purpose of going to the mikveh anymore, because even if somebody was a Baal Keri, even if he saw this emission come out of him, he would not be tamei in order that it should be forbidden for him to learn Torah. And mandamar balur lenitilata kiha de Rav Chisda, the one who says that no, they didn't get rid of going to the mikvah for a person who was a Baal Keri in order to learn Torah. It means that they got rid of washing your hands. Who do they hold like? They hold like Rav Chisda, like this member of Rav Chisda, that Rav Chisda said, didn't say, but at the time of prayer, at the time of davening, if somebody would run around trying to look for water to do netilah, he would curse such a person, because you're going to go daven. It's not a problem. Don't run around looking for water. If you have, great. If you don't have, don't run around. So that's a machloket exactly what they annulled, what exactly annulled when they came. Okay, Tana Rabbana. Baal Keri shenanu alav tisha kabin mayim tahor. This is something that we even do nowadays. People who can't go to the mikvah, so at least they do what we call tisha kabin. Tisha kabin is 9 kabin worth. It's machloket how much it is. I saw Chaim Nah holds, I think it's about 3 point something gallons, 3.3, 3.4, somewhere around there. And the Chazon Ish, I think, held about 5.5 gallons, something like that. So you take this water and you pour it on a person, and instead of going to the mikvah, as far as this halacha goes, as far as a Baal Keri, if a person saw this emission, so it would help as well. Nowadays, we usually use this. It comes up Erev Rosh Hashanah, Erev Yom Kippur. People who can't make it to the mikveh, they tell you at least stand on the water for a little bit, or pour this water on yourself, and it'll do something. People can't make it to the mikveh because there's a big inyan to go to the mikveh Erev Rosh Hashanah, Erev Yom Kippur. But if a person can't, so at least this 9 kav, this 9 kav worth of water, whatever it is, 3-5 gallons. So it would help for something. So this is one of the sources for that halacha. But we're going to discuss it a little bit. So if this Baal Keri, if this person who saw this emission come out of him, if you pour on top of him 9 kabin worth of water, so he's good to go. He's tahor. Nachum ish gamzu lachshel Rebbe Kiva. Nachum ish gamzu, he whispered to Rebbe Kiva. Rebbe Kiva lachshel Ben Azai, and Rebbe Kiva whispered to Ben Azai. Or Ben Azai yata b'shana l'tamida b'shuk, and he went out and learned it, taught it to the Talmidim, to his students in the marketplace. Meaning he went in and he was telling over this halacha. Now, sidetrack, but pligi ba trei amorai b'marava. You saw there was a machloket between two amoraim. Rabbi Yossi bar Rabin, Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida. Chad tani shana. When the last one, when we said Ben Azai, that Ben Azai went out and what did he do exactly? Did he teach it to everybody, or did he whisper it to everybody? Meaning, when you whisper it, when the Gemara talks about whispering, it means that he kept it on the down low, as they say, right? He didn't want people to know about this halacha. We'll see why in a minute. Or does it mean that he taught it out to everybody? He went and publicly told it to everybody so that people should actually know this halacha. Now, why would you whisper versus teaching it? So the Gemara says, right, that he went and he taught it to everybody out in public so that they should know this halacha. That he whispered it, just like his Rebbeim whispered to him, he whispered it to everybody else so that people really don't know this. So the one that said that Ben Azai went out and he actually taught it to the Talmidim, to his students, is Mishum Bitul Torah, is because of Bitul Torah, right? So he didn't want people to, because again, if we're saying that a person who saw this emission has to go run and go to the mikvah, right? Or if he has to go run and try and purify himself, so what happens with the Torah? Sometimes he'll come half an hour late to Amud Yomi, and you ask him, what happened to Amud Yomi? I have to go to the mikvah. So he's running around trying to find water. It's a big issue. So therefore, for Bittul Torah, we don't want people to stop the learning of Torah. So therefore, he went and told people, just go ahead, use the 9 kabin. It's fine, go for it, right? Instead of going to the mikvah, just pour 9 kabin. It was much easier. Now, the one who's Umishol Bittul Perivribia, also, additionally, people, the Talmidim, the students, if you don't tell them this, then they're going to stop being with their wives, because they're going to say, okay, I'm going to be with my wife tonight, and then tomorrow morning I'm going to have to run around trying to find a mikvah. Forget about it. I'm not interested. And what happens? The mitzvah of having more children is going to be batel. It's going to be nullified. People are not, the Talmidim are not going to want to be with their wives. So because of that, they said, you know what? Don't worry about it. We'll go easy on you. Go ahead and just do the 9 kabin. It's much easier. Now, the one who said that no, Ben Azai came, when Ben Azai said it over, he didn't actually say it out and teach it like that. What did he do? He whispered it. That means he doesn't want people to actually know this halakha. Why would he say that? That the Talmidei Chachamim, the Rabbanim, they should not be like their wives. They should not be together with their wives like chickens, right? Chickens are constantly with their mates. So we don't want the Talmidei Chachamim to always be with their wives, right? Whatever the reason is, either because you're supposed to be parish a little bit for Talmidei Chachamim, they're not necessarily always supposed to delve and dive into every single desire that they have. This is actually something brought down in Shulchan Aruch, that a person is supposed to be with his wife, but again, there's limits. What we say in the parsha of Kedoshim Tiyu, the pasuk says Kedoshim Tiyu ki Kadosh. You're supposed to be holy. Famously, the Ramban over there, famous Ramban on that pasuk says that even things that is mutar to a person, for example, eating meat, drinking wine, these things is mutar for a person. Sometimes it's even a mitzvah, but everything, as they say, in moderation, right? If you have too much of it, what we call, a person could become a menuval, Berachot Torah. A person could become a disgusting thing, even with the Torah's permission. The Torah allows you to do certain things, but pump the brakes. Take it easy. You don't have to always dive and indulge in these type of things. That's the famous Ramban. This is what the Gemara is saying, that we don't want the Talmidei Chacham to always be with their wives. So you know what? We don't want people. A person has to know that if they're going to be with the wife, the next day they have to go to the mikvah. We don't want people to know this. People who know that you can use 9 kabin, so they got lucky. They came to Amud Yomi, they figured it out, and they're good to go. So that's the machloket, if he taught it or did he whisper it? Amar Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai said like this: Shamati shemakilim bam. I heard that some are mekel, some are lenient when it comes to this, that they use either bathhouses or they pour on 9 kabin, these 3 to 5 gallons. But I heard some people are machmir, know that if they become a carrier, if they saw this mission, that they go to a mikvah. And he says, anybody who's stringent upon himself to go to the mikvah after he sees carry, then he's going to have a long life. His days and his years are going to be elongated. Okay, so that's Rabbi Yanai. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Shua ben Levi says like this: what's the purpose? What's the good about going to the mikvah in the morning? The Gemara says, Mativan. What are you saying? What do you mean? What's the good about going to the mikvah? Ha-ihu de-amar. Rabbi Shua ben Levi was the one that said in the beginning of the sugya, the Baal carries asur b'divrei Torah. If somebody sees this emission, if somebody is a Baal carry, right, then he's not allowed to learn Torah until he goes to the mikvah. So what do you mean? What's the purpose of going, or what good do you get out of going to the mikvah in the morning? You're the one that says that you're not allowed to learn Torah until you go to the mikvah. So the reason why you go to the mikvah is in case somebody was a Baal carry. So the Gemara says, no. This is what he meant to say. Hachika amar. This is what Rabbi Shua ben Levi meant to say. Ma tivan ba'arba'im sa. What's the purpose of using 40 sa, which is a mikvah, after b'tisha kabin? Why are you running around and looking for 40 sa, meaning a regular 100% kosher mikvah? Why don't you just use the 9 kabin? And ma tivan b'tivila. Why do you have to dip into the mikvah after b'netina? Why don't you just pour it on yourself? So instead of running around trying to find a mikvah to immerse yourself into, to go into, why don't you just pour the water onto yourself? Right? It's much easier. And we said also before, because of Bitul Torah, if you're talking about Talmidei Chachamim, you're talking about the Chachamim, so we don't want them to run around trying to find a mikvah. Go easy. So the Gemara says, no. Amar Reb Chanina says like this: Gadol Gadruba. They put a big fence over here, a strong fence, that a person has to go in order to learn Torah. He has to go to the mikvah. The Tanya. We learned in a Breita like this that there was a story. There was a person who was asking a woman to do an affair with him. This is talking about a single girl, and a single girl is still asur midrabanan to be with her. So he told her, okay, let's go do an avera, let's go be together. And Amr lo, so she told him, Reika, you empty person. Do you have a mikveh nearby that you're going to jump into the mikveh after we're together? And miyad pirush, right away he saw that, oh yeah, right, I don't have a mikveh. I'm not going to be able to go learn Torah. So he separated from her. They didn't do the avera. So because of this, if they know that they're not going to be allowed to learn Torah until they go to the mikveh, so people are not going to fool around, right? To say it delicately. Amalahu. So Amalahu Rav Huna l'Rabbanan. Rav Huna told the rabbis, Rabotai, why are you holding like a Yehuda ben Betera to say that you don't need to go to the mikvah, right? This is like it's such a big kula. What's the problem? Why are you belittling this din of going to the mikvah when a person is about carry? If it's because it's cold and they didn't heat up the mikvah, so you have freezing cold mikvah, you're trying to go into it at 6 to 5:30 in the morning and it's freezing cold, so people are like, forget about this. So it's possible you don't need to go to the mikvah. You can even go to a bathhouse, which is heated up, because he holds that going to a bathhouse is good enough. Amalei Rav Chisda told him, does that actually work? Could you actually go to the mikvah in hot water, meaning in the bathhouse, where the bathhouse is heated up? Are you allowed to use that as a mikvah? So the Gemara says, Amalei Rav Huna told Rav Chisda, Rav Ada Barava Kai Kivatech. You're right. Rav Ada Barava holds like you that it's asur to use a bathhouse. You have to actually use a full-fledged mikvah. You got to go, you got to dip, and you got to go to the mikvah. But as of now, that he doesn't hold about, he says, yeah, you're right. Rav Ada holds like you that it's asur, but we hold that it's mutar. So go. Why are you belittling this mitzvah if you can go to the bathhouse? If you can get out of it by going to a nice warm jacuzzi, so go to a nice warm jacuzzi. What's the problem? Reb Zera, so the Gemara says, Reb Zera Haviyativ ve'agna demaya be'mesuta. Reb Zera was sitting in a tub of water in the bathhouse, right? Amalei l'shemaya, he told his attendant, he told his servant, his person who was mishameshem, zil v'aiteli tisha kabin, bring me 9 kabin, whatever it was, 3 to 5 gallons, 5.5 gallons, v'shadi alayu, and pour it on top of me. So Amalei Barabba was sitting there. He says, "What's going on over here? You're sitting in the bathtub, right? Why do you need to bring water and pour it on top of me, on top of you also? If you're sitting in the bathtub, you're saying that's good, which is the equivalent of this 9 kabin. So if you're already sitting in the bathtub, you need to bring more water and pour that water onto yourself also. You're already in the tub." So he told him. So that's what he asked him. Amalei Barabba told him, why do you need to go through all this? Right? You're sitting in the tub. You're sitting in this bucket of water. What do you need the 9 kabin to be poured on you as well? So Amalei, so he told him, it's similar to 40 sa. 40 sa is a mikvah. And just like when you go to the mikvah, right? If a person goes to the mikvah, you can't take the mikvah and pour it on top of yourself. You actually have to go and immerse yourself inside the mikvah. It's called tefillah. You have to go in and dip your body into the mikvah. So it's very specific how this mikvah works. Just like when it comes to a regular kosher mikvah, you have to dip into the mikvah. You can't take the mikvah and pour it onto yourself. Tisha kabin, also Tisha kabin is very specific in how it works, and it's benetina v'lo b'tevila. When you're using 9 kabin, you have to pour it specifically onto yourself and not sit in the 9 kabin. Sitting in the 9 kabin doesn't do anything for you. You have to actually pour it upon on yourself. So therefore, even though I'm sitting in a bathtub, it makes no difference. It's not a kosher mikvah. You actually have to pour it upon. You have to pour it on yourself. Okay. Which is brought down also. So somebody wants to use this 9 kabin, you can't just take 5 gallons and put it in a bucket and go sit in the 5 kabin and say, okay, good, I'm good to go. No, you actually have to take it, and you actually have to pour it, right? meaning the question is, do you need like koach gava, which means like regular, like let's say in the Tila time, you're supposed to have where the water is coming from a person. So nogea, let's say somebody doesn't have a cup. You're in the airport or you're on vacation and you don't have a cup and there's no like river that you can dip it in. So the question is, could you go to a faucet and turn it on, stick your hands underneath it and go one, or do you have to turn it on and off a million times until you have it going because you need your power to it? So here is also a similar idea where you can't just go and sit in the water. You actually need the person to pour it on. You need that koach gavra in order to pour it onto the person in order for him to be purified to a certain degree. Okay. Reb Nachman Tikein Chatzva Batish Kaben. So Reb Nachman, he made a kli, right? He was inventive. So he figured it's a good business. Instead of having small little cups, and then you got to measure each cup and figure out how much 9 kabin is, he made a 9 kabin worth, he made a 5.5 gallon or 3.3, whatever that is. He made a cup that can hold that amount. Very good. Right? He sold it on Amazon for a lot. He made a killer off of it. So he made this 9 kabin worth jug. Kiata Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came, Amar, he said, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yehuda Gilustra Amru, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda Gilustra said, Lo ishanu ela lechol ela onso. When does this 9 kabin work? When could you use this 9 kabin? Is only if it's a sick person and he saw the carry come out against his will. Meaning there's 2 ways for it to come out. Either it came out, a person, it just came out, there's nothing that he can do, it's beyond his control. Or there's what the Gemara is going to call margil, which is where he was with his wife, and because he was with his wife, it came out, right? The immersion came out, and therefore that's why he would become tameh. So these are the 2 ways for it to happen. So when did they say that a person could be lenient, a person could be makel, and they can use this 9 kabin to pour on himself? That's only a sick person who saw it come out. It was against his will. It just came out. He has no idea why. So then they said, this type of a person, we could be makel for you. You could be lenient. Just pour 9 kabin on him. He's good to go. Let him go to shir. But if you have a sick person that was with his wife and now he made it come out purposefully, right? But it's supposed to happen, but he did. It was ragil, meaning he did it in the normal way. So abayim sa, the 9 kabin is not going to work for such a person. You caused it, so go to the mikvah. What are you using 9 kabin for? So therefore, Rav Yosef said, because of this memory of Rav Dimi that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda said that it only works. This trick of 9 kabin, pouring it onto somebody, only works for a sick person that saw it against his will. He just happened to see it. So therefore, it's Berachot 22a Nachman. This 9 kabin, right? The ratings tanked, and it was done because he basically broke the not literally, it means figuratively, he broke this kli, this vessel that held the 9 kabin because there was no point of it. How many people are sick and they happen to see it? It's a small market for that. Business wasn't doing too well, right? Because they came and they said it doesn't work for most people, because if you see it if you're with your wife and you see it, even if the person is a sick person, still he has to go to the mikvah. So therefore, this kli that you pour on yourself, this 9 kabin is not going to work. So ki'ata Rabin Amar, when Rabin came, he said, Be'usha have the uvda. And Usha was a town, a city. There was a story that this came up. Bekila de Rav Oshia, in the room, the chamber, the house of Rav Oshia, and Atu v'shalu l'Rab Asi, they came and asked the question from Rab Asi, what do we do? So Amalahu, he told to them, Lo shanu ela l'chol hamargo. When could you use it? When could you use the 9 kabin? Is only for a sick person, even if he sees it in a normal way, meaning even if he was with his wife and he caused it to come out, right? So that would also be mutar to use the 9 kabin words. You don't need to go to a mikvah. So he said, but if it, let's say it's a sick person who it just came out, he didn't cause it to come out, it just happened to come out. So then pater miklum. Rav Asi held that you don't need anything. You don't need to go to the mikvah. You don't need the 9 kabin. You're good to go, right? Because a person is sick and it came out against his will. He didn't try for it to come out. It just came out of his body. So you don't need anything. You don't need a mikvah. You don't need 9 kabin. So Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef heard this, he said, it's tamid chatzvei de Rav Nachman. This barrel of this jug of Rav Nachman was put back together, right? We sealed it back together, and now it could be used again because because this case of a chol hamargel, if a person is sick and he caused it to come out, is a normal case, right? Because the Gemara says that the Talmidei Chachamim, a few places, but they say that the Talmidei Chachamim are considered sick people, right? Because they don't necessarily a lot of times take care of themselves, right? In the Dharma also, right? They don't really necessarily take care of themselves. They're constantly learning, so they're considered as if they're sick. A lot of halachot nogea too, but as far as this goes, so the Talmidei Chachamim are considered sick, and they're considered margel because when they're with their wives, so this comes out. So therefore, they did it purposefully, right? Obviously, they're supposed to, but I'm saying purposefully as far as opposed to honest. How to exactly translate it is interesting, but they're with their wives, so therefore they came out purposefully, and they're considered sick. And Ravasi held that you can use the 9 kabin for it, so you're good to go. Business is back up as usual for Rav Nachman. No, sick people means sick people, but Talmidei Chachamim happen to be considered sick. Sick people, because basically they didn't. If a person was sick, you want to know what degree? If he's a cholesh yesh b'sakana, ein b'sakana, nafal lamita. If he has to go to bed, if he has a headache, I don't know what degree. I'm not sure. It's just like, but the point was, it was very tough for people to go to the mikvah. I mean, Baruch Hashem, we have a mikvah around the block. A person wants to go to the mikvah, tfaddal. It's nice, hot. You have a hot mikvah, you have a cold mikvah. You can go to the hot mikvah, go to the cold mikvah. You can do whatever you want. We live in a very we have a luxurious life. But to go to the mikvah, you think, maybe in Yerushalayim they had like mikvahs all over the place because they needed it. You have by the excavations, you always see like one house and like 3 mikvahs around there because everybody was going to the mikvah all day long. They were just running to the mikvah every 2 seconds. Like it was a big thing, but it's hard for people to go to the mikvah. So if a person was sick, the Chachamim didn't want to go bother a person. You're sick, okay, fine. So we'll let you get away with 9 kabit. That's a sick person. They have a heart. They understand it's difficult. They're going to make the guy get out of bed. Now, if he just has a headache, it depends what kind of a headache. If it's a school headache, which is a headache where kids say I have a headache because they don't want to go to school, I don't know if that would count. It has to be somebody who's really sick. I'm assuming. A person who's bad. I don't know what degree. But a sick person. But the Talmidei Chachamim were considered to a certain degree sick, and therefore they didn't obligate them to go to the mikveh. They said, okay, you're sick. Even if it's a ruggle, even if they were with their wives, just go put 9 kabin on, pour 9 kabin on, and you're good to go. You don't need to go to the mikvah. No, kabin is a certain measurement, but when you define it, it comes out to about that much. I mean, don't pinpoint it. Oh, you said 5.5. I don't know. It's something around it, 5 something gallons. So exactly 3 gallons, 5 gallons, whatever it is. Fine. So it was put back together. Now, so the Gemara says like this: Michdi, what's going on over here? Kula Amarai v'Tanayi b'Ezra kamiflagi. Right in the beginning of the sugya, we said that Ezra came along. Ezra wanted people to learn b'kedusha, so he instituted that if a person sees his emission come out, they have to go to the mikvah. Right? They're not allowed to learn until they go to the mikvah. So this is not like a secret of the Torah. This is Ezra that went and he instituted this halakha. He instituted this din. So why don't you go find out how he was mitakenet? Why don't you just go see how he instituted it? What's the problem? So Michti, the whole machloket over here is going on the takana of Ezra, which is something that Ezra put in. Why don't you just go look how Ezra was? How he instituted it. How was he metaken it? Very good. And instead of having all these machloketim, so just go check it out. So Amar Abaye says because the way it worked is Ezra tiken labriya amaragel memsa. Ezra, this is Abaye's opinion. We're going to see it's going to change. Rabbi is going to say a different way. But according to Abaye, Ezra came along and said, for a healthy person that sees it in a normal way, a regular way, meaning when he was with his wife, is memsa. He has to go to the mikvah. Meaning a healthy person who saw it normally has to go to the mikvah. Uberiya leonso tet kabin. Now let's say you have a healthy person, full-fledged healthy person. He's able to go on a good bike hike on a Sunday morning, right? He's nice and healthy, but it happened to come out. He sees it. He sees an emission come out. For him, we said, Ezra says, for you, all you need is 9 kabin. Now that's all talking about a healthy person. Ezra wasn't talking about a sick person. Now what's the halacha by a sick person? the Amoraim came afterwards. Upligi b'chola. They argued about a sick person. That if you have a sick person that sees it normally, meaning he was with his wife, will have the same status, will have the same halacha as a healthy person that sees it normally, which is going to the mikvah. They have the same status. That means, according to him, he's splitting up between ragel, seeing it normally, and onso, seeing it without a person's intent, without forcibly doing it. That's how he splits it up. So again, right? The person who sees it, a chola that sees it normally, is the same halacha as a healthy person that sees it regularly, normally, which is a mikvah. A person has to go to the mikvah for that. The chola leonso is kibaria leonso, and a sick person that sees it against his will, right? It just comes out, has the same halacha as a sick person, as a healthy person that also just saw it come out. That all you need is 9 kabin. That's the way he splits it up. It depends how you saw it, right? It doesn't matter if you're sick or healthy. What matters is did you see it normally, meaning being with your wife, or did you see it in a not normal way? It just came out by itself, which you would need 9 kabin in either case. So he doesn't make a differentiation really between healthy and non-healthy. Meaning when Ezra came, he was only talking about a healthy person. But when the Chachamim came, they tried to compare it to somehow that Ezra was metakenet, right? No, the other one holds, he disagrees, and he says that a sick person that sees it normally, meaning he was with his wife, has the same status as a bari laonso, a healthy person that sees it against his will, which would be 9 kabin, right? To pour 9 kabin on such a person. And a sick person laonso, who sees it, if a sick person sees it come out against his will, meaning he didn't try, he's patur meklum. He has a step lower where he's totally patur. He doesn't need a mikvah and he doesn't need 9 kabin either. He's totally good to go. So Amar Rava, that's all according to Abaya, right? So according to Abaya, the machloket is if you have one opinion says, meaning just to say it out, according to Abaya, the way it works is that Ezra came along and he said for a healthy person who sees it in a normal way, you have to go to the mikvah. If you see it against your will, if it just happened to come out, you need 9 kabin. Now the rabbis, the Amoraim came and they had a machloket. Now, when the person is sick, what status does he have? So one holds that if he's sick and he sees it normally, he has the same status as somebody who was healthy and saw it normally, and he has to go to the mikvah. If he was sick and it came out in against his will, he needs 9 kabin. Now, the other opinion disagrees and says, no, it's a step lower. If a sick person who sees it normally needs 9 kabin, and a person who sees it, a sick person who sees it against his will needs nothing. So it's a step lower. Now, Rava comes along and says, Amar Rava, ni the tiken Ezra Tevila, netina mitiken. Even though Ezra was metaken to go to the mikvah, was he metaken to put the 9 kabin? Right? More said that Ezra tiken Tevila lebali karayim. When Ezra was metaken this din, you're telling me that for a person, even according to Ezra, you're telling me that Ezra, if somebody saw it against his will, if somebody saw this carry against their will, leonso, you're telling me that he needs 9 kabin. Where did you get 9 kabin from according to Ezra? Ezra never mentioned anything about 9 kabin. Ezra is only talking about going to a mikvah. More, Ezra taking Tevila about nothing to do with 9 kabin. So where'd you pull this 9 kabin out from? Shalom Rav, okay, new pshat, right? New explanation. Okay, so we're going to go back to Ezra. Ezra tiken Tevila hamargel lebari hamargel memsa. Ezra came along and said, if a bal keri, if somebody sees keri, a healthy person sees bal keri, and he saw it in a normal way, i.e., he was with his wife, that type of a person needs a mikvah. Now that's all that Ezra said. He said a healthy person who sees it in a normal way, he needs a mikvah. After Ezra, the rabbis who came afterwards, they said, okay, you know what? A person that's healthy, but he saw it against his will, we're not going to make him go to a mikvah, right? We feel bad for him. Let him just pour on himself this 9 kabin. That's the rabbis that came afterwards. But Ezra wasn't, again, Ezra's not talking about anything to do with 9 kabin. Ezra doesn't deal with 9 kabin. Ezra's just dealing with the mikvah. Meaning, if you're healthy and you see it in a normal way, you have to go to the mikvah. The rabbis came after.